Hey everyone, welcome back to Deep Dive. Today we're going to get into something I think a lot of us are dealing with, and that's burnout. You
Yeah.
know, that feeling of just being completely fried.
Uh-huh.
So to help us unpack this, we're diving into Emily Balestro's book, The Cure for Burnout.
Okay.
And we're going to use the why, how, what framework to really break this down
Love that.
and hopefully pull out some really solid, actionable advice.
Yeah, that's a great approach. I think Balestra starts off with a really powerful image. She describes this moment where she broke down crying in the ramen aisle at Walgreens,
Oh,
completely overwhelmed by her never-ending to-do list. And I think a lot of us can relate to that feeling of just wanting to disappear under the pressure.
oh yeah, for sure.
But she goes beyond just describing the feeling and digs into why burnout matters.
Right. It's more than just feeling tired.
Exactly.
It has real consequences.
Absolutely. In the book, she talks about how burnout can have some serious consequences for our health, our relationships, even how we see the world.
Yeah, it can really impact how we see ourselves and everyone around us.
It can steal years of your life where you're just stuck in survival mode. But the good news is it doesn't have to be this way.
That's reassuring.
This deep dive is all about equipping you with the tools to move from surviving to thriving, reclaiming your time and energy for the things that you love.
Okay, so let's get into the how.
Right.
Balestros identifies these three distinct types of burnout.
Okay.
And I think understanding which type resonates with you can be really eye-opening.
For sure.
So first up, we have burnout by volume.
Yes, this is that drinking from a fire hose feeling, constantly bombarded with tasks, always on, always
I
behind.
know that feeling.
You knock one task off your list and two more appear.
Oh yeah, it never ends.
She compares it to fighting the mythical Hydra.
Oh wow.
Every time you cut off one head, two more grow back.
That's a pretty accurate description, I think.
Yeah, and to illustrate this further, she uses the story of Mandy, a PR professional,
Oh.
who was so overwhelmed by client demands that she resorted to wearing a phone holder around her neck,
I can't even imagine.
just to keep up with all the incoming messages and calls.
Wow, that's a powerful image.
It really highlights how that constant connectivity and pressure can lead to feeling trapped.
Yeah, you're never truly able to disconnect.
Exactly.
Next, there's social burnout.
Yeah.
This one hits home for me. It's that feeling of being drained by constant social interaction, feeling like you're everyone's therapist, and exhausted by the pressure to please everyone.
Exactly. Balesteros talks about Lisa, who felt so drained by her demanding relationships that she would pretend to work late just to get some peace and quiet.
Oh, I've totally been there.
I think a lot of us have, needing to create those little escapes just to recharge.
Yeah, for sure.
The key here is recognizing why you're feeling that way and finding healthier ways to manage those social demands.
So true. Sometimes you need a break from people no matter how much you love them.
Right.
And then we have the third type, burnout by boredom,
Uh-huh.
which might seem a little counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but it's that feeling of being stuck in a rut, uninspired, lacking that sense of purpose.
If you're feeling unchallenged or lacking that spark, that's a sign that something needs to change.
Okay.
It's about feeling misaligned with your values and goals.
So it's not just about being busy, but being engaged in the right things.
Exactly. It's not just about being busy, it's about feeling engaged and passionate about what you're doing.
All right, so we've identified the why burnout matters,
Uh-huh.
and we've explored the how, those three different ways burnout can show up.
All right.
Now let's talk about the what. What can we actually do about it?
Yeah.
This is where Balesteros introduces her 5 pillars of burnout management.
Love it.
And this is where the book gets really practical.
Yeah. These pillars provide a framework for tackling burnout from multiple angles, and she starts with mindset,
Okay,
arguing that it's the lens through which we view the world.
that makes sense.
Are you your own worst critic? Do you equate your worth with your accomplishments?
It's so easy to fall into those traps.
Our mindset can either fuel our burnout or help us thrive.
It's like the foundation everything else is built on.
Exactly. And this is where she dives into those 3 specific burnout mindsets:
Okay,
high-achieving people-pleasing and self-victimizing.
those are really distinct categories.
Each one has its own set of thought patterns and behaviors that contribute to the cycle of burnout.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think it's so valuable to identify which one resonates with you,
I agree.
because that awareness is the first step to changing those patterns.
It's like you can't fix what you don't acknowledge.
Absolutely. And she uses this powerful analogy here, the flea in a jar.
Okay.
She explains how our limiting beliefs, like the lid of the jar, can keep us trapped in old patterns even when conditions change.
So even if you've achieved success, you might still feel limited by those old beliefs.
Exactly, those beliefs that are no longer serving you.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So how do we break free from those self-imposed limitations?
She talks about the power of shifting our internal dialogue.
So changing the way we talk to ourselves.
Yes, and replacing self-criticism with self-compassion.
That's huge.
It's about recognizing that you're doing your best even when things don't go perfectly.
Giving ourselves a break.
Exactly. And that leads us perfectly into the next pillar, personal care.
Okay, so also we think of personal care as a luxury,
Right.
but Balestros really reframes it as a necessity.
It's not selfish. It's essential for preventing and recovering from burnout.
So it's not an indulgence, it's an investment.
Exactly. And she introduces this concept of non-negotiables.
Okay, I like that.
Those core elements you absolutely need to function, like sleep exercise or that first cup of coffee in the morning.
We all have those things we can't live without.
Right. It's about identifying your personal essentials and making them a priority.
Making them non-negotiable.
Yes, and she goes even deeper with this idea of three-dimensional personal care.
Oh, wow. I'm intrigued.
Which includes maintenance, rest, and refill.
Okay, I'm listening.
What I find interesting is that she breaks down personal care into these different categories, showing us that it's not just about bubble baths and face masks.
Right, it's more holistic than that.
Exactly. So maintenance is about those essential tasks that keep life running smoothly, like paying bills or doing laundry.
The things we have to do.
Right. And rest is about activities that genuinely recharge you,
Okay,
like reading a book or taking a nap.
that sounds nice.
And then refill is about engaging with things that bring you joy and replenish your spirit,
Okay.
like spending time with loved ones or pursuing a hobby.
So it's about making sure all three dimensions are addressed.
Yes, it's about having a balance.
I really love that it's so easy to get caught up in the have-tos and forget about the things that truly nourish us.
It happens to the best of us.
And in the book, Balestros offers some really practical tips for incorporating these different types of self-care into our lives.
She does. She talks about romanticizing mundane tasks,
Okay, how do you do that?
like making laundry day more enjoyable by listening to your favorite podcast. She also talks about creating personalized morning and evening routines and setting minimums to avoid all or nothing thinking.
I think that's a really important point because it's not about being perfect every day.
No.
It's about making those small efforts consistently.
Exactly. It's about finding what works for you and building it into your routine.
It's not about being perfect. It's about consistency.
Yes. And even small, consistent actions can have a cumulative effect on our well-being.
And speaking of consistency, let's move on to the next pillar, time management.
Right.
In a world that glorifies busyness, it's so easy to fall into that trap of thinking our worth is tied to how much we do.
Oh, for sure.
But Balestros challenges that notion head on.
She encourages us to prioritize our energy and focus on what truly matters.
It's about quality over quantity.
Yes. And this is where she introduces the idea of a morning meeting,
Okay, what's that?
which is basically taking a few minutes each morning to check in with yourself, set your intentions for the day, and identify your most important tasks.
It's like giving yourself a mini pep talk and setting yourself up for success.
Exactly. And she provides some really actionable tools as well, like the urgent important matrix, which helps prioritize tasks based on their urgency and importance.
Okay, so it's a way to be more intentional with our time.
Yes, rather than just reacting to whatever comes our way.
We can be more strategic.
Exactly. It's about making conscious choices about how we spend our time and energy.
That leads us perfectly into the next pillar, which is all about boundaries.
Oh, yes, boundaries.
This one can be tough, especially for those of us who are people pleasers.
Definitely.
But Balestros really stresses that setting boundaries is not selfish.
It's essential.
It's essential for protecting our time and energy.
She acknowledges that fear of rejection can hold us back from setting boundaries, but she provides some great tools for overcoming that fear and communicating our needs effectively.
Like what?
One of my favorites is the idea of creating space before agreeing to requests.
I need to learn how to do that.
Instead of instantly saying yes, she suggests saying something like, "I'll check my calendar and get back to you."
That's a game changer. It gives you a chance to pause, assess your availability, and make a thoughtful decision rather than just saying yes out of obligation or fear of disappointing someone.
It's about taking back control of your time and energy.
I think that's something a lot of us can benefit from.
Absolutely. And she provides other great tools like using I statements to clearly and confidently express your limits, setting clear expectations to avoid misunderstandings, and even having a CC, someone in your corner who can support you when setting boundaries with more challenging individuals.
That's brilliant. It's like having backup when you need to assert yourself, especially in situations where you might feel intimidated or unsure. So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've explored the three types of burnout, delved into Balestros's first four pillars of burnout management, and even touched on some of the powerful tools she provides for implementing these pillars in our own lives. I feel like I'm already getting a much clearer picture of how to approach this whole burnout thing.
It's a comprehensive approach to understanding, preventing, and recovering from burnout, and it's filled with actionable strategies that can be adapted to fit individual needs and circumstances.
And it sounds like she doesn't shy away from the tough stuff.
No, she doesn't. Even with all the tools and strategies, sometimes a job or a situation is just toxic and unsustainable.
Right. Sometimes it's not about fixing the situation, it's about removing yourself from it.
Exactly. And that's where Balestro's own experience comes in.
Yeah, she shares her personal story of leaving a soul-crushing job and the challenges and rewards of rediscovering herself afterward.
She doesn't sugarcoat it. She talks about the fear, the uncertainty, but also the incredible sense of liberation and empowerment that comes from choosing yourself and your well-being.
I think that's such a powerful reminder that sometimes walking away is the best thing you can do for your well-being.
Absolutely. And she provides guidance on how to navigate that transition from taking time to recover and reconnect with yourself to reaching out to your network and rebuilding your career on your own terms.
It sounds like she really walks you through that process.
She does, but before we dive into the specifics of walking away from a toxic situation, we need to talk about that final pillar, stress management.
Right, because stress is a huge contributor to burnout.
It's a major factor.
Okay, so let's dive into that.
In part two.
Yeah.
So we left off talking about that fifth and final pillar, stress management.
Right.
Stress is an inevitable part of life, but Balestros provides some strategies for understanding our own unique stress response and developing healthy coping mechanisms that actually work.
I'm in all ears. What kind of strategies does she offer?
Well, she introduces this concept called the triangle of awareness,
Okay.
which encourages us to connect our bodily sensations, thoughts, and emotions to identify stress in real time.
So it's like becoming more aware of what's happening internally
Exactly.
so we can respond more effectively.
It's like having an early warning system for stress so we can catch it before it spirals out of control.
Okay, that's really helpful.
In the book, she also talks about the importance of compartmentalization,
That's
right?
compartmentalization.
Yeah.
That's huge, especially when it comes to work stress.
It's about creating those mental boundaries that allow us to fully engage with different aspects of our lives without carrying the weight of one into another.
So you leave work at work and you fully embrace your personal time without letting those work worries creep in.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense, but I know I struggle with that sometimes. It's like my brain just doesn't want to shut off.
I hear you.
So what are some practical tips for actually doing that, for containing that work stress?
Well, Balestros offers a few different strategies. One that I found particularly helpful is the idea of creating a tangible versus intangible list.
Okay.
It's about separating those actionable tasks from those worries and anxieties that we often get caught up in.
So the tangible list is all about those concrete things you can actually do something about.
Right.
And the intangible list is for those worries or what ifs that are swirling around in your head.
Exactly. So it's a way to kind of declutter our minds and focus on what we can actually control.
I like that it's a way to get it all out of your head and then sort it out.
And for those intangible items, she talks about using cognitive reframing to challenge those negative thought patterns that can contribute to stress and overwhelm.
So it's about shifting our perspective,
Yes, looking at things from a different angle.
like challenging those negative thoughts.
What other tools does she offer?
Well, she encourages finding healthy ways to release stress, like exercise or spending time in nature, which I know you're a big fan of.
I am.
She also talks about the importance of pursuing hobbies and connecting with loved ones as ways to replenish our energy and de-stress.
It's about finding those activities that bring you joy and nourish your spirit.
So we've talked about the 5 pillars: mindset, personal care, time management, boundaries, and stress management. These are all great for preventing burnout and creating a more balanced life.
They are.
But what about when you're already in a job or situation that's causing you to burn out?
Yeah.
Is there anything you could do besides just walk away?
That's a great question. And actually, Balestros addresses that directly in the book. She outlines a 4 steps to freedom process that you can start implementing right now to create a more balanced life.
Okay, I love a good action plan. What's step 1?
Step 1 is all about awareness. It's about taking stock of your current situation, identifying your stressors, and recognizing how burnout is manifesting in your life.
So really understanding what's going on.
Exactly. And she recommends tracking your time and energy to really see where your resources are going.
It's like taking an inventory of your day-to-day experience. Where's all my time and energy going?
That's really eye-opening. What's step two?
Okay, step two.
Step two is where you look at that data objectively as if you were a stranger observing your own life.
Interesting.
What patterns are you noticing? Are there any surprises?
It's easy to get caught up in the daily grind and not realize how certain habits or patterns are contributing to our burnout.
Mm-hmm.
This step encourages us to step back and get a clearer perspective. What about step three?
Step three is about reflecting on what's working well and what could be improved.
Okay.
But Balestros emphasizes that this isn't about striving for some unattainable ideal.
Yeah.
It's about being realistic and identifying small, achievable changes that can make a big difference.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between accepting where you are and envisioning where you want to be.
Exactly. And then step four is about putting those insights into action.
Taking action, I like it.
Balestros encourages using a change formula where you clearly identify the desired change and the specific actions needed to make it happen.
It's not just about wishing things were different.
No.
It's about taking those concrete steps towards creating the change you want to see.
What about specific strategies for making those changes? Does she offer any advice on that?
She talks about habit stacking, gamification, setting reminders, and finding an accountability partner.
So it's about setting yourself up for success.
It's about experimenting and finding what works for you.
So what about those times when, even after trying all these strategies, you realize you're just in a toxic situation, a job that's just completely draining your soul? I think that's where Balestro's own story becomes really powerful, right?
Yeah, she shares her personal experience of leaving a soul-crushing job and the challenges and rewards of rediscovering herself afterward. And she doesn't sugarcoat it. She talks about the fear, the uncertainty, but also the incredible sense of liberation and empowerment that comes from choosing yourself and your well-being.
I think that's such a powerful reminder that sometimes walking away is the best thing you can do for your well-being.
And I think it's important to remember that walking away doesn't mean giving up. It can actually be a powerful step towards creating a more fulfilling and authentic life. Balestros talks about using that time to reconnect with yourself, explore your passions, and really figure out what you want your next chapter to look like. It's about taking ownership of your life and your career.
Exactly. And she offers some really practical advice for navigating that transition from taking time to recover and reconnect with yourself to reaching out to your network and rebuilding your career on your own terms. She emphasizes the importance of self-compassion and self-care during this process. It's a time for healing and rediscovering who you are outside of that toxic environment.
So we've talked about the 5 pillars, the 4 steps to freedom, and the power of walking away when necessary. I feel like I'm getting a much clearer understanding of how to approach burnout, both proactively and reactively. What about you? What are some of the key takeaways that have stood out to you as we've been diving into this book?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me is that burnout is not a character flaw. It's a signal that something needs to change. And the good news is that we have the power to make those changes.
That's so important. It's not about blaming ourselves. It's about taking responsibility for our well-being and taking action.
And those changes don't have to be huge, sweeping life overhauls. Balestros emphasizes the power of small, consistent actions. It's about those little tweaks we can make to our mindset, our routines, our boundaries that can have a significant impact over time.
It's about creating a more sustainable and fulfilling way of life, one step at a time.
And one final thought that really resonated with me is that self-care is not selfish. It's an act of self-preservation. It's essential for showing up as our best selves, both personally and professionally.
You can't pour from an empty cup,
Yeah.
right? You have to take care of yourself, first and foremost. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into the cure for burnout, I'm curious to hear what's resonating with you. What are some of the key insights or tools that have stood out to you so far? For me, it's that idea of shifting our mindset around burnout. It's not a personal failing, it's a signal.
Yeah.
And we can learn to listen to it and respond in a way that's actually empowering.
It's about reframing burnout as an opportunity for growth and change,
Right.
rather than a sign of weakness.
And I love how Balestro the 4 steps to freedom. It's all very concrete and doable.
It's not about some magical overnight transformation.
Right.
It's those small, consistent steps that
Yeah.
lead to big changes over time.
Exactly. And it's about finding what works for you. She really emphasizes there's no one-size-fits-all approach to burnout recovery. It's about experimenting, finding those tools and strategies that work for you and your lifestyle.
Absolutely. It's about personalizing the process and finding a sustainable approach to well-being.
Yeah, something you can actually maintain over time.
For sure.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the cure for burnout,
Okay.
I'm wondering if we could distill this all down into a few key takeaways.
Okay.
What are the most important things for our listeners to remember as they navigate this whole burnout thing?
I think a good place to start is recognizing that burnout is incredibly common.
Yeah,
You are not alone in this. So many people are struggling with it.
it's so widespread.
And there's absolutely no shame in admitting you need help. In fact, seeking support is a sign of strength, not weakness.
That's so important. It's not about suffering in silence. It's about reaching out, connecting with others, building a support system
Exactly.
that can help you through those tough times.
Another key takeaway is that burnout is preventable. We've talked about those proactive strategies.
Yeah, prioritizing personal care, setting boundaries, managing stress, all of that.
Cultivating a more supportive mindset.
Right? It's about building those healthy habits into our lives so we can avoid getting to that point of complete burnout.
And if you are already feeling burnt out, remember that recovery is possible.
It's not a dead end.
It's about taking steps to reclaim your balance, prioritize your well-being, create a life that feels more aligned with your values and goals.
Sometimes that means making tough choices, like leaving a job or a relationship that's no longer serving you.
But those choices, while difficult, can lead to greater freedom, fulfillment, and joy.
This deep dive has been so insightful. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on burnout, and more importantly, I feel empowered to do something about it.
Me too. Balestros offers such a hopeful and empowering message. Burnout is not a life sentence.
It's not the end.
It's a wake-up call. And we have the power to answer that call and create a more balanced, fulfilling life.
So as you go about your day, we encourage you to reflect on what we've discussed and ask yourself, what one small change can you commit to making today to start reclaiming your balance and moving towards a more fulfilling, less burnt out life?
Remember, even the smallest steps can make a big difference.
And don't be afraid to reach out for support. There are so many resources available, from therapists and coaches to online communities and support groups.
You don't have to do this alone.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the things that matter most to you.